I'm a little worried by this hushed silence that's sort of fallen across the room. I'm presuming either you're in awe or more likely you had a big night. Can I just take a vote? Who had a big night? Yeah, I figured it wasn't the awe thing. Right, okay, that's good. So my name's Jeff Anderson. I'm a senior product manager. Even so, I can't make my slides advance, which is interesting. I really can't make my slides advance. This is pretty exciting. It's weird because I had an opening joke, and my opening joke was I was going to do this with no slides at all. And then I remembered that I sit just down the hallway from the folks who manage PowerPoint, and there's no way I could really explain that without, screaming and yelling. And so the fact that I can't make PowerPoint go is kind of funny. So here we go. I am Jeff Anderson. I am a senior product manager in the Information Worker product group in Redmond. And I really did want to spend most of this session talking about SharePoint Office better together. I ummed and ahed about whether this was a 200 or a 300 level session. In the end, I made it 300. The more I worked on it, the more I feel like it's 200. It's kind of 225, 227 maybe. So don't judge me harshly. What I'm hoping is that everyone here will learn something new today about the ways that we've made Office and SharePoint go together. Just want to remind you of the tweet a nugget. If you actually find any nuggets here in the session, you should absolutely tweet them to your heart's content. Be in to win fabulous prizes, such as Exhibits A and B. This is the only slide in the entire session this morning. Incidentally, there are a couple of seats down the front here. It's pretty full, but as I said in my last session, if you're planning to leave, you're probably in the right place, but otherwise, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 down here. Just want to talk really quickly about our strategy, just for a brief moment, and then I promise the rest will be all demo. So what is our strategy with Office, with SharePoint, with our Information Worker products in the 2010 release? This diagram actually does a pretty good job of kind of highlighting what we're trying to do, and I just want to make 4 points before I move on. The first is that we used to think about our products very much in terms of individual products. So what shall we add to Word? What shall we add to Excel? What shall we add to SharePoint? We kind of stopped doing that with the 2007 release, and we tried to think much more about how can we actually deliver these 5 pillars of capability across your business. So UC, BI, ECM, collaboration, and enterprise search. And that's much less about what feature do we add to each product. It's much more about what's our all-up solution for each of these things. And so we'll add pieces, you'll see as we go through, we've added things to SharePoint, we've added things to Office, and in fact our other service, Communication Server, and of course Exchange, to really try and build up more and more capability. So that's the first thing, is that we're trying to think in terms of these outcomes, and not just desktop products, server products, which has maybe been the traditional split. Second one, of course, is that we've tried to bring these together. So we know that when you add blogs, when you add wikis to enhance your collaboration strategy, you introduce new challenges for search. You introduce new challenges for ECM. So we're trying to engineer a platform where as we build this, and it's taken us about 3 years to do this release, as we build this, we try and think about how these things are going to work together. And hopefully in the demo today, you'll see some good examples of that. The third, of course, is that we talk increasingly about the cloud on your terms. And the cloud on your terms simply means that we are the player in the market who enables you to start on-prem and move to the cloud in your own time per workload. And if you've been to some of the sessions around SharePoint Online, and around BPOS, you will have heard this story. I'm not going to go into it in great detail, just to explain that really our strategy is to treat each of you as individual organizations. So to know that some of you will want to stay on premises, some of you will want to move certain workloads to the cloud relatively quickly. Some of you might be on a path to move everything to the cloud relatively quickly. Our objective is to give you a platform that lets you decide where you are on that continuum and sort of goes on that journey with you. 2010, when we get to BPOS 2010, it's going to be a great step in that direction. For the next release, beyond this, we're really trying to turn things around and engineering this building primarily for the cloud, and then we'll port back to on-prem rather than the way we've thought about it. I know this isn't exciting setup stuff, but it helps me ground myself, so bear with me for 1 more minute. The fourth part of this story is really about where Office traditionally sits, which is the best productivity experience across PC, phone, browser. So you'll see that some of the most exciting things that we've done between Office and SharePoint in this release About half of them manifest in the Office Rich Client, about half of them manifest in the Office Web Apps, which are of course new this time. And our design strategy here is relatively simple. We would like to get to a place where it doesn't matter if you put your server capability in the cloud, you put it on-prem. The fact is, it looks the same to users. You've got this abstraction of the user experience. And that user experience is mostly about Office. And so what I hope you'll see today is not just that you can do lots of stuff with Office and SharePoint together, but that it's very easy, because obviously our aim is to drive a lot of this capability out of IT needing to do it and enabling business units and power users to start to really build this advanced capability. All right, so with that, I'll move off the slides and jump into, hopefully, a very weird resolution. So I apologize for the fact that the edge of the screen is cut off. I don't think anything is going to be particularly bad because of it, but you know, if you need something for the comments, you can certainly write, Jeff failed to put the right resolution on the screen, and that gives you a good starting point. So I'm going to head into SharePoint first of all. I'll go into a fairly typical SharePoint document library. I've created a special one here for TechEd New Zealand. And here in my document library, you immediately see a few things that are new in SharePoint. Probably the most important one is that we have the Fluent UI. So now when I click on Library, you see that I immediately get a very different looking interface. So one of the challenges for end users in SharePoint 2007 was that they found the interface difficult to navigate. We've done a lot of work in this release to bring contextual Fluent UI, just like you would see in Office, into SharePoint. And one of the most obvious things that I can do is very quickly see where my Office interaction points are. For example, take this library, TechEd library. If I want to know that I'm going to have any content in here offline, I can very, very easily go right up here and say, sync to SharePoint Workspace. What is SharePoint Workspace? SharePoint Workspace is a new product in Office Professional Plus 2010. It acts as a kind of an offline cache of documents. So with 2 clicks, first I say sync to SharePoint, and then I say OK. And it immediately goes in, and it starts to synchronize this to my computer. And so now, what I have here in my SharePoint Workspace is a new section called Documents. And you see that here in my rich client, I have all those documents. So I can go offline, I can make changes as a user, I can, you'll see, I'll show you some more advanced scenarios as we go on. But in essence, this is the way that I can be sure I've got all my SharePoint stuff with me when I'm offline. That's pretty important. If you're trying to drive SharePoint uptake in your organization, one of the biggest challenges you have is probably that users find it easier to save stuff to their local drive. They feel comfortable with that. They've always done it. They know they've got it, right? SharePoint Workspace makes it super easy to say, look, now you need to save your stuff into SharePoint because you will still have it with you. And this is automatically updated. If I add a file on either side, it'll be synchronized back. And it's also using a very efficient transfer mechanism. So if files are updated, it's just sending the changes. It's not actually sending the whole file back again via an algorithm that we borrowed from Groove, which was the predecessor of this product. So what we've done to create SharePoint Workspace is we kind of took, who was familiar with Groove in the 2007 timeframe? So Groove was basically a peer client system, and we added some stuff in 2007 that let you pull SharePoint stuff into it. In 2010, we've kind of turned that round. We've made the primary scenario for this product that I can click and I can take my stuff offline. So you should, by now, have seen how similar the Fluent UI is. Notice that we've added a couple of things into SharePoint Workspace, incidentally, that people have been asking us for. There's now a search. That was something that Groove was definitely missing. And also, we have the new backstage view in every Office application. So the backstage view is what I get when I hit the File button. Sorry, I'm making that obvious for me, maybe not for you. What I get when I hit the File button. And so it's very consistent, very much the same in each of the applications. All right, so let me jump into one of these files. I think I'll pick one from here in SharePoint Workspace, at least if I actually open it correctly. Let me just open this up, and let's take a look at some of the ways that we interact between SharePoint and Office in the new release. And a lot of those actually surface from the Fluent UI, and particularly from the new Backstage. So here's a really good example. If I hit File, I immediately see that I've got all these tabs. They're very obvious. Info, Recent, New, Print, Save and Send. These are, almost without exception, ways that I'm interacting with SharePoint now. So there's a lot of stuff in this Backstage, but a lot of it is about making the most of SharePoint. Here's a relatively simple example. On the Info tab, I've got things that I want to do with the document, protect, check for issues, etc. But over here, if I say Show All Properties, you actually see that all of the SharePoint metadata associated with this file shows up here in the Backstage. So for example, I have a drop-down box which talks about the secrecy on this file. I have a retention schedule. All of that is set as in the SharePoint library and then pulled through directly into Office. So a much easier, much more transparent way of doing this than we had in the last release, much better together. If I had multiple versions, I would see the versions here in the versions and check out. All right, let me just make sure I'm showing you what I intended to do here. Right, so as I said, thing that we wanted to do in this release was make it as easy to save to SharePoint as it is to save to your local hard drive. So the recent documents now not only shows recent documents off my hard drive, but it also shows recent SharePoint sites. Anyone who's used Office 2007 with SharePoint 2007 knows that actually finding the library is one of the hardest things for the users. You have to sort of go into the browser, pick up the URL, and then paste it, right? Very painful. So all of that's gone away in this release. In this release, there's a simple Connect to Office. And so when I hit the Connect to Office button, I can add to my SharePoint sites, or I can remove my SharePoint sites. I'm going to add this library to SharePoint site, and now whenever I go in and I go to, for example, Save, there's a new button here, Save to SharePoint. And Save to SharePoint actually shows me the current location of the file, shows me the recent locations I've been in, and it also shows me any of those locations that I've added. So again, as a user, it's really, really easy for me to set up these locations and make sure that they're all in the same places. If I go to the print experience, this has got nothing to do with SharePoint whatsoever, but I feel compelled to talk about it because it's relatively cool. How many people have in their life walked down the hallway to pick up their Excel spreadsheet and discovered that it's come on 14 sheets, each with 2 lines in 5-point font? Has anyone not had that experience? Yeah, I thought so, right. So what we've finally done in this release is that we have taken everything for the print experience in all of the applications and put it all together in one place. So now I can select my printer, I can print all the pages, I can choose all these settings, I can immediately see what the impact is going to be, I can see what it's going to look like, and it's basically all good. I need to be connected to the printer for that to truly actually work for me, but you get the idea. It's possible to see everything in one place and make the right decisions on that. As I showed you, Save and Send is the new place that I can do a number of different things. My personal favorite here is Save to SharePoint because it's new, but I can also send using email or similar to that. One of the other things I can do here is publish as a blog post. And that's actually kind of interesting because one of the things we're trying to drive with the combination of SharePoint and Office is making it easier for people to work together and sort of bring social networking into the enterprise in an enterprise manageable way. So how easy in practice is that for users to do? Let's take a look. So I won't save that. I'll head out here, hopefully. I'll head out to my SharePoint site and I'll go to the new My Site. Who's seen the new My Site experience, just out of interest? Almost no one? Fantastic. I feel better about that already. So here is a My Site, a typical My Site. So here's the My Content page. It's going to behave, this is where you establish whether the demo gods are going to be with you or not for the day. And maybe a not. But essentially I can always get to the My Site simply by clicking on my own name. So here is where my content will be. My shared documents live here, my personal documents live here, shared pictures, all of those things. But over here, by default, is recent blog posts. Have we got some space there? I have. So how easy is it for a user to set up their own blog? How simple is it for a user to do this stuff? Well, it's this easy. I hit Create Blog in my site. It goes away, and it says, OK, I'll do all the magic behind the scenes. Voila, welcome to your blog. That's the SharePoint side. So I am now, as it were, live within my organization, able to blog. But what's the Office integration here? Well, the Office integration here is if I go into Word, and I go back to the backstage, and I say publish as a blog post, I can literally, say publish as a blog post. I want to register my account, so I'll register it now. Word is able to work with a number of different blog providers. I'm obviously going to choose the SharePoint blog. I'll say next, and I'll paste in the URL of this blog. The reason we did that, incidentally, and didn't automate it completely is, of course, that it can work with any of a number of different blogging solutions. So we didn't want to limit Word to just the SharePoint one. But if I do paste in the SharePoint blog, it sends it off. Word cannot register your account. Thanks very much. Do that now. Let's try once more. OK. Maybe we don't want to answer the question, how easy is it for a user to create a blog on my demo machine? Let me do that once more. So, OK. Let's paste the right thing in, and then we might all feel better about this. So, File. Save and send. Publish as blog post. Publish as a blog post. I'm still going to register now. I'm still going to go to SharePoint. And this time, I'm only going to take that out, and I'm going to leave blog there. And then I think we'll be much happier. Account registration successful. And so now I have the ability to put in my blog post title. Thank goodness. Second attempt, much more successful. And from here, it's very, very easy for me to do everything from use the Word functions like insert picture, insert clip out, or just I can insert a category. If I'd decided that I wanted to pick up some categories, it'll pick those up. So what have I got? I want to add a new one. I'll call a new category Tech Ed. And there I am. I've got that all done. And then I publish. And so when I publish, it says the post was published to the blog. And voila, from now on, it's very, very easy for me as a user to just make those posts from within Word without actually going anywhere near SharePoint. So integration between the way Office thinks about blogging, the way SharePoint thinks about blogging. Incidentally, across the suite in both SharePoint and in Office, presence is everywhere. So for example, here you see the jelly bean. That immediately brings up what we call the contact card. You'll see this contact card in Outlook. You'll see it in SharePoint. You'll see it obviously in Communicator. And that's my way of instant messaging. It's my way of getting into UC. It's my way of sending email. So whenever I see a name, you'll see the same thing in the Office backstage. Everywhere you go, presence. All right, then. Let me... I was determined to go back through the backstage in order, and now I'm starting to jump around. All right, so... I wrote all of this down very carefully so that I didn't leave something out. Okay, so let's shift gears a little bit, and let's get out of the rich kind and talk about one of the biggest investments that we've made this time, which is, of course, Office Web Apps. Has anyone heard of Office Web Apps? Please put your hand up. Thank you. You wouldn't believe how much we invested to get that number of hands to go up. You really would. So let's go in here, and let's go back into this Tech Ed. Not there. Let's go back into the content for a start. If I could. And back into the Tech Ed directory. And so now, without needing to have Office installed on my machine, so imagine a kiosk. I go to analyst conventions a lot. Analyst conventions inevitably have banks of machines that you can connect to the internet on. They also inevitably have about 10 PowerPoints. When I say PowerPoints, I mean places you plug your laptop in. And they have about 1,500 attendees. And so the competition for recharging your laptop, very high. Your ability to actually keep working without your laptop being charged, up till now, very low. But now with Office Web Apps, I can go to any of those machines and I can connect and I can pick up information right from within the browser. So when I go to my SharePoint library, I do the drop down and I say View in Browser. And it's literally that simple. I'm now opening the document and I see it in the browser. The thing about this is that it's really, really high fidelity rendering. So here's a very nice chart that somebody had created. I'm not sure how you're supposed to take a lot of meaning out of that, but it's rendered faithfully. More importantly, in Office 2010, we introduced the idea of spark lines. So I can actually see these various trends in a much more obvious way here in this spark line chart, which sits within a cell. All of that gets rendered in the browser. I don't need Office installed. I don't need any of it. Now, of course, this isn't the full Office experience, right? If I go Edit in Browser, which I can also do, then you'll notice that instead of the, 8 or 9 tabs that I have in Excel, I actually just have 2 tabs here. I have a Home tab with a few things on it, so I can do some basic editing, and I have an Insert tab. And so that enables me to add a couple of things. So we're not planning on the web apps being the way everyone does all their work. What we're planning on is making sure that whenever you're in a situation where you don't have your rich client, you can do what you need to do. And so it's very easy for me to look at this. We do add some quite sophisticated stuff. For example, here's a pivot table, and it uses what we call the new slicer technology. So this is technology that was new in 2010. And what this does is it's a classic pivot table, but we've tried to make it a whole lot easier for users. Right? So it's much more graphical. So for example, I'd like to know what we sold in the year 2007. I can literally just hit 2007. It immediately reduces the data in the pivot table, as a classic pivot table does. But look over in product category. Notice how it's grayed out a whole number of the things on the left. That's because it's giving me a summary. So this is a kind of a two-way piece of data. I talked a little bit about this on Monday. It's a kind of a two-way view of data. Right? On the one hand, I can use this to filter, but on the other hand, I can use it to choose which of these I want to see. And my point is, this is relatively high-end capability, and yet it works in the web app. Works just as well as anywhere else. So that's the first thing I can do is from anywhere I can pick this up. Now from a SharePoint point of view, the web apps introduce some kind of interesting capabilities. So for example, if I go back to that library again, let me go to a site here. Here's a fairly undeveloped site, right? Just an ordinary marketing site somewhere on my intranet. I can actually use these web apps to do much, much richer experiences. So I don't know how many of you have tried to edit a site in SharePoint 2007, but it's become much easier because the Fluent UI really helps me here. So for example, there's a very obvious edit button. Any page I can just work on the content with. I can delete content. I can change content right here within SharePoint. So this is pretty cool. I don't want to go there. No, stop that. So I'll take this web part out altogether, I think, and at least I hope I will. Have you ever tried to use one of these on a sloping surface, incidentally? It's quite interesting. I will say text layout, 1 column, take all of this content out, and then what am I going to do with this space? Well, I think I might insert a web part. And some of the web parts that we have this time are much more exciting because of the investments that we've made in the web apps. So for example, now when I take the Office client application, I can say I'd like to insert Excel Web Access. Add that. It loads it in. Click here to open the tool pane. Can you still see that? Yes, you can. I can pick up that same workbook. It's under Documents, it's under Tech Ed NZ, Sales Analysis. And here, I've now created an intranet page, or actually maybe I haven't now, there we are. I've now created an intranet page that has that same very, very rich experience that I had in the web apps. So there's really two ways that we're using this web app rendering engine. On the one hand, I can use it as an end user to get to my information from anywhere. And SharePoint is serving that up, even though it's an Office experience. The other way I can use it is that I can take the web part and I can embed this stuff onto intranet pages, onto website pages in a very, very rich interactive way. So all of that stuff that I did before, all of the things with the pivot table, they all still work because it's just the same engine running within SharePoint. Is that obvious? Is it boring? It's not boring? Okay, good. You are behaving like a crowd that partied hard, or else a crowd that is completely disinterested in what I'm doing. So one of the two is the message I'm taking here. All right, so let's go on. So that's kind of web apps. Now, one of the other interesting things about Excel, let's just whip out of here and come back in again. One of the other interesting things about Excel is that it is one of the apps that does co-authoring. So co-authoring in Office 2010 is the ability for people to work together on a document, a spreadsheet, or a PowerPoint at the same time. So if you think of a policy analyst, if you think of a sales team working on RFP, we all know how this works, right? It always works the same. There's always we always start ahead of time. Always start ahead of time. Someone puts a blank document onto SharePoint, and that's good. Everyone's happy about that. And then everyone checks it out, adds stuff, checks it back in. Happy about that. Then we get towards the deadline, and this is where everything goes wrong, right? Once we get towards the deadline, suddenly everyone wants to make changes. And of course, the message that they get is this document is opened by Jeff, you can't edit. And usually that's where the process breaks down. That's when people start emailing pieces of documents around. That's where somebody gets stuck with taking everybody's input, putting it all into the document. And so the point at which you need the process most is the point that it breaks down. So co-authoring is designed to solve all of this problem. So for Word and for PowerPoint, co-authoring is in the rich client application. For Excel, though, it's actually in the web app. So let's take a quick look at that. This is going to be something of a demo challenge given my resolution things, but let's give it a go. After all, you might as well give it a try. So, as one user, I'm going to do what I did before, which is I'm going to edit this spreadsheet in the browser. Nothing new here. And let's just make that a bit smaller. And so here is user 1 living right here in this virtual machine, okay? User 2 is going to live in this virtual machine. And user 2 is going to do the exact same thing. So user 2 is going to Cup Engineer Explorer. Okay, and we're going to take this sales analysis thing. Obviously, the average user doesn't have to deal with this particular layout. Thank goodness. So, edit in browser. So now I have 2 users editing this document in the browser. So at the moment, you see that it says 1 person editing. Very shortly, what I should see is that it will say 2 people editing. Aha! System account is now editing the workbook. Again, in a non-demo situation, normally a bit friendlier, right? It will tell you who is editing the workbook. But now we actually have near enough to real-time editing going on here. So for example, let's just see if we can get a view of the same piece of the spreadsheet here. Too many scroll bars. So, 22i. Let's head across to 22i. So here we have 1040. I might decide that that's a fairly important cell and I want to highlight that. I'll highlight it with that. And I'm going to change this number here to be 456. And you see that in pretty much real time, these changes are actually being made on the other one. So multiple people can be working on this. You can have one in New Zealand, one in Redmond, one in the UK. They can all be doing what-if scenarios. This is the full Excel experience with co-authoring happening. If you want to know what's going on and who's editing, you always have that information at the bottom. So it's a very, very seamless experience. The whole point of the way we did this was to try and not make it complicated for users to do it. They go to SharePoint, they open it, And if there's someone else editing it, bang, you're co-authoring. If someone else isn't editing it, you're single authoring. The experience for the user really doesn't change. A lot of people ask, why is co-authoring for Excel in the web app and in Word and PowerPoint it's in the rich client? It's basically because, well, firstly, we invested in what we thought were the key scenarios. But the reason we chose Excel to do this is that the grid scenario works really well for real time. So I change a cell, someone else changes a cell. It's very obvious what's happening. If you try and do that in PowerPoint or in Word, you get a really weird experience. If you're on page 10 of a document and there are 5 people editing above it, things are moving around all the time. So we don't do that. The way we do it is with a save and an update model. And so in Word, if 2 of us are editing, when I hit save, I get their updates, they get my updates. And of course, we lock at a paragraph level. So in real time, if I'm editing a paragraph, you can't edit that same paragraph until I leave it. So it's, again, a very seamless kind of scenario, very easy for the user, hopefully very easy for IT to set up. Need to move on or I'll get left behind here. So, can't get left behind in your own demo, trust me. So let's bring this back. So now I was going to show you, I want to sort of get, those are kind of very end-usery scenarios. Those are the sorts of things that we hope end users will pick up on and will find immediately valuable. We'll find that they're, and the way end users sort of see that is, okay, I know that SharePoint is a place I put my documents. Okay, I know that Office is where I do my work. And now Office has got more functionality and SharePoint's a really easy place to get my stuff from. And so those are end-usery type scenarios. But of course, the second type of scenario that we wanted to build for is really a much richer sort of a scenario where business units can start building their own little applications. And I thought what I'd do to sort of show you how this works is I'll show you a relatively common scenario. So a list scenario. So I'm going to create myself a new list here. I'm going to create a classical contacts list, probably something every person in the IT industry has at some point done. So here are my easy lists. I'm just going to say I'd like a contacts list, please. And of course, SharePoint goes off and it creates me a new contacts list, or at least it should. Come on, demo machine. Ah, there we are. Give it a name. Don't fly and then present. That's my advice. So, contacts. Great. Thank you to all the SharePoint gurus in the room. All right, so not a particularly intuitive experience now. When I say add new item, I'll get a form of sorts. Let's see what that looks like. It's a bit grey, right? It's a form. It's okay. You can put information in it, but it's hardly inviting, and it hardly screams, this is sophisticated new stuff. So let's not do that. Well, luckily, once we start to do stuff like this, again, the Fluent UI is our friend, because we notice all sorts of interesting things are possible. Like right here, for example, is a big customized form button. And that customized form button has an info path icon. Can anyone guess what's going to happen when I hit that button? What's going to happen is I'm immediately transported into InfoPath, which is a rich client, part of Office 2010, and a very much easier environment to do some of the things I might want to do. Now, of course, we had some integration like this in 2007, but nothing like what I'm going to show you. For example, I can pick a layout that I think might look cool. Well, cool is perhaps pushing it. That I think might look industrial. There we are. So there's a nice grey layout. I can decide that I want to change the way these things here look. And I've got all the sort of obvious editing stuff that you'd expect. So I'll go for, 14 point. I put them in bold? No, but I might put them in italic. And so I can do all of that sort of simple stuff that improves that. But of course, I can do other things as well. For example, I can take any of the fields and I can say the text in this should be red. Take this field, the text in this should be red. But I can also do slightly more sophisticated things. For example, I can go in and I can say I'd like to add a rule. And I'm going to say, hey, if this field is equal to something, then let's set a value. So I'm going to say, if the first name in this field is equal to Jeff, then I want to set the value on another field. And I think the field I'll pick is probably the notes one down at the bottom here. And I'll change it to, what do we put in it? This guy's demo probably rocks, and he is really modest. Okay, so now I have some declarative logic there, right, which I've assigned to the form. You've been able to do this in InfoPath forever. You've been able to do it with some coding in SharePoint forever, but you've never been able to do this, which is I hit this one button, quick publish. It says verifying form template on server, and it says your form was published successfully. And so now if I go back and I take a look at this and I say add new item, voila. I have the form and I have it in the gentle industrial color scheme that we talked about. I have the right form size, and I can go ahead. Notice that my typing does come in red. Here's Jeff, and you'll notice that it has changed that field using the declarative logic. So it's picked up. You can applaud if you like, because that's actually pretty cool. And okay, don't then. So the person who worked on that for 3 years is going to be really hurt. Okay, so the reason that this is important, obviously, is it gives me a much easier way to take all the logic, all the formatting, and put it into the browser, so anyone can fill this out in the browser. Now, just to show I didn't cheat, I should probably, no, I don't want to turn autocomplete on. I should probably fill out another one, so we'll put some gibberish in here, and you'll see that sure enough, the rule doesn't fire. So the logic has come through to the server. That's all cool. You're saying, okay, well, I'm vaguely impressed with that, Jeff, but the problem is most of my people don't necessarily have their stuff online, which incidentally is where Sync to SharePoint Workspace is going to come in really handy. Because here, once again, I see an icon I'm familiar with. You know how I took my document library into SharePoint Workspace before? Now I can do it with this form. So I say Sync to SharePoint Workspace, and with any luck, the sync actually happens, because that's kind of important. Oh, come on. Don't fail me now. Well, that's not fair, is it? So what happened is I've already set this up to do something different in a different place, and it's not very happy about the fact that I'm trying to do it again. Let me give it one more go. Just not going to do it. Vagaries of how my demo machine is set up. Let me run through that really quickly again and just create that in a different place that it hasn't been synced to before. You're feeling my pain, aren't you? Let me hit somewhere else. Where can I go? Myself in projects here. Okay, let me create a new list here. I can do that. So, create a contact. I'll just create a basic contacts form here. Hit create. Now let's try that again and we'll see if it's going to do it. Oh, okay, it is going to do it. All right, so now my synchronization is working. Sorry about that. Vagaries of the demo system there. And you'll see that the projects form is now there. So just in the interest of time, let me just very quickly customize that form again. So we'll do what we did before. We'll make it a nice colored theme. We'll make it blue. We'll pick up some of this stuff again. Actually, let's put our logic back in. So let's say we're going to add that same rule. Equal to Jeff, change the value of notes to this guy's demos only sometimes rock, which is more the situation we're in now, I think. And we will publish that back again. It's all good. So we know that that works in SharePoint. Now in SharePoint Workspace, which is the thing I really wanted to show you here, in SharePoint Workspace I go into my projects, I say new. So now, just to be clear, I know this is all a bit confusing. Things are jumping up and down on the screen. What I've got here, imagine, if you will, that I am now not connected to anything, and I'm just in SharePoint Workspace. It's taken that offline. I can say new, I can say contact, and it will pick up still that same form, and it will bring it offline into SharePoint Workspace. I can fill it out. I can do that. And the declarative logic, on a good day, what did I miss? No! All right. I think I did resync to get it there, though. So in short, I can't explain that. Let's try resyncing and see what happens, but I don't think that's going to help me. I did not perform the blood sacrifice, and I believe that that may have been when honestly, I got up this morning. I mean, what was on my agenda? There was, set up demo. There was have breakfast with Nathan. There was, perform the blood sacrifice, and I just forgot. So, okay, new contact. One more try. It's amazing how well this worked for me just last night. Aha! There we are. Thank you to the gentleman who said sync again. That was, in fact, what happened. Yes, one clap. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Okay, so what is my point? Because Lord knows you're looking for a point. My point is this. I'm able, as a user, when I'm not trying to run 4 servers and a client on a single machine in 2 VMs, I'm able, as a user, to build a very simple application, which is a contacts application. I'm able to take it into InfoPath, apply all of the logic, all of the formatting, everything, and then I can synchronize that to SharePoint Workspace, and I can take that offline with me. I can add those scenarios in there so that when I'm offline and I have to pick up information, it goes there. Of course, when I go back online, it will sync back. So really a very, very tight integration between InfoPath, which is the much easier form designer, and SharePoint, which is the obvious place to do the processing, to do the forms management, to apply the logic, and all of those things. All right, I think given that that was supposed to be the easy part of the demo, I'm a little bit nervous about the next bit now. Let me get back into SharePoint. So, here I am back in SharePoint again. So I want to show you something that we haven't actually documented that much. And I wanted to do this from scratch. This is basically about being able to create a particular... I wanted to show integration between templates in Office and SharePoint content types. So let me go back here into Documents. And let me go into, where am I going here? Yes. Okay, so the first thing I want, so here's what I'm going to try and do. And I will tell you that if you thought that was flaky, this next one is unbelievably flaky. But again, if I'm running an enterprise setup, it will actually work. But I'm going to show you because I think it's sufficiently useful that I want you to know how to do it, even if my demo doesn't ultimately run it. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a document template. I'm going to create a content type that has that template attached in SharePoint. And I'm going to show you how you can surface that in the new tab on the backstage in PowerPoint. Does that make sense? So what's going to happen here is I'm going to have a particular type of content. When the user goes into PowerPoint, they will be able to pick up that template, make the changes, and then save it back and have everything... have it populate everything that we want to do based on the fact that it was that template. So let's have a look at how we do this. So site actions. The first thing I do is I go into site settings. So I'm going to need to create a site content type. And so anyone who's worked with SharePoint and content types knows how to do this. But when I say create, I'm going to say I want to have a new board presentation content type. I'm going to select a parent content type. I'll just do custom, and I'll base it on one that already exists, which is sales presentation. And so now, across the site, I've created this board presentation content type. Under the advanced settings, what I want to do now is I want to upload a new document template to associate with this. So this is the critical stage, right? The critical thing to do here is to take a document template that already exists and add it into this content type so that it's the default document template for the content type. So let me take something like, this very nice template here, TechEd 2010 New Zealand. I'm going to say, yes, that's going to be the template that I want to use. So now I have a new content type. Let me go back into the documents library. And let me say, again, the Fluent UI is my friend here. I go into library and I see that there are settings. So what I want to do, that content type can be used anywhere across the site. What I want to do now is associate it with this particular library. So perhaps not surprisingly, I go into library settings. And you see that all the content types have been turned on. If they weren't, I would have the option to turn them on. I've turned them on, and I want to add from those content types the one that I've just created. So I'm going to take that board presentation one, which now appears in the list, and I'm going to say add. And so now, when I look at the library settings, you see that board presentation has been added. I've got a new content type right there. Okay, so now when I go back into documents, preferably that one, I'm just going to say add a document because it seems to speed the process up from the point of view of my demo machine. So just give it a second to do some upload. So it's basically going to take that change and upload it. Under normal circumstances, this would all work transparently, but I'm trying to speed it up for demo purposes. So now I have that new content type there. Now this will only work if my library is connected to Office. So as you know, we already connected that to Office before. Let's just check that it's there. Yep, it's connected. That's fine. So at this point, I would like everybody in the room to take this finger and place this finger over it, like this. Okay. Frankly, very important, because it turns out there are some things that happen here in regular time that may or may not happen in demo time. But it would be awesome if my luck came true. Look at that. So, doing it in Word and now in PowerPoint. So now, as a PowerPoint user, I click the New button, and a new section has appeared, SharePoint Templates. If I go into that SharePoint Templates, you will see board presentation is now available to me as a template. All right? I could have attached all sorts of metadata to that template. I could attach a workflow to that content type in SharePoint. The scenarios that you can enable with this are really quite amazing. So you build the template, you attach the metadata to the content type, and then whenever anyone in your organization starts a presentation using this template, whatever needs to happen can happen. You can kick off workflow. You can make it save to a particular location. It's just a SharePoint content type. The key thing that's new is there never used to be a way to bring that into Office. So there was no way to actually integrate that with the Office Backstage. Now, in 2010, Office and SharePoint work together so that people can see those templates and can work with them immediately. Obviously, you can tidy this up. You might want to name that something different. But the essence of that idea, brand new in 2010 with SharePoint and Office. Yes, I think the three... Yeah, there's two categories of people. There are three. The first category is wondering why they're here. The second category is like, that's very interesting, I'll never use it. And then the people who started reporting are the ones who are like, yes, I can use that, right? As you go forward and as you start to think about this, the frame to think about it in, I think, is what can I do to make some of these processes in my organization work better? So, for example, most board reports today are probably done with email. Somebody starts a presentation, somebody sends it, pieces get added, right? The first thing you can do is you can improve it with co-authoring. And co-authoring is just SharePoint and Office working together. And so with co-authoring, multiple people can pick up that template, can add slides, can add content, can update content, and all of that mailing around goes away. The second thing that you can do is that you can add much richer content that's available from SharePoint into the template itself. So you can bring in digital assets, you can bring in all of those things that we've enabled. But the third thing you can do to make it really sophisticated is you can say, okay, I want to build an end-to-end workflow without code. And so we do that using this document template function. So I can very easily apply any type of workflow code that I like onto that content type. And it will enable me to work with whatever I want to do. So for example, I can have it change fields, I can have it post to different places, I can have it kick off a workflow when that presentation is posted back into the library. So endless options, but they all come basically from the integration of being able to say, because people can now get to that content in the application they know, which is PowerPoint, then that's the easy way for them to get to it. So to sum up, because I think it's probably time that I summed up. It is time that I summed up. Essentially, with Office 2010 and with SharePoint 2010, what we're trying to do is build for several different audiences. We wanted to make things super simple for Office users in a way that they could just see whole new functionality. And things like co-authoring, things like PowerPoint broadcast, things like Office web apps are targeted at them. So if you go out and you implement that functionality, then your users get that sort of goodness right away. That's kind of step one. Then we wanted to build scenarios that enabled sort of business unit IT to do things much more effectively. So we wanted people to be able to build things like forms and simple workflows in a very rich way, but essentially as power users. And so that's the second scenario, is that SharePoint and Office work together so that you get the best of both worlds. SharePoint is an awesome workflow engine, it's an awesome document repository, it's an awesome place to store all this stuff. Office is a very, very easy place for people to modify this content. So what you saw there, working with a SharePoint form and then pulling into InfoPath, is a very easy way to make a scenario that worked quite well but wasn't particularly rich, very much richer because Office and SharePoint are working together. And then as you get more sophisticated, you start to take advantage of the capabilities of SharePoint beyond that. So things like content types, which enable you to very, very richly work with content, start to get into content management, and still the integration with Office enables you to make it relatively easy for an end user who only knows about Office to go in and start these processes off and work with these processes right within Office and within the Office backstage. So as you think about SharePoint and as you think about Office, I encourage you to think about them together, right? As that first diagram shows, we're not really thinking so much about Office, the desktop product, SharePoint, the server product. We're really trying to think, how do we bring these two things together? And as you see, there's an awful lot of jumping off points within each product that take you to the other one. And as we go forward, we'll continue to make those interactions more and more powerful. That's it. I really thank you for your time. I appreciate you coming, and have a great rest of TechEd.